And good afternoon, Bernie. How lovely it is to meet with you again since OAEM was invited to meet with you in September. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome on behalf of the Ontario Association of Emergency Managers. My name is Paula Marie Janetta, President of OAEM, and I have the privilege to be your host and moderator for today. OAEM is Canada's largest volunteer professional association representing the interests of Ontario's diverse public, private, non-government, Indigenous, and student emergency management community since 2004. Our mission is to influence the modernization of emergency management in Ontario while promoting information exchange, collaboration, networking, and professional development opportunities for our members. Connect with us at oaem.ca and ask how you can engage in supporting your professional association. Give us a few minutes to allow everyone to get logged in, and a kind reminder to mute your microphone, but remain with your camera on for Bernie, who would like to see your wonderful faces. This event is for educational purposes only and is being recorded. We are thrilled to host today's Emergency Management Spotlight Series virtual event with Deputy Minister and Commissioner of Emergency Management Ontario, Bernie Derible. Ontario's first ever Provincial Emergency Management Strategy and Action Plan sets a foundation for a proactive approach to emergency management in Ontario. This foundation will enable a safe, practiced, and prepared Ontario based on a one-window approach for all Ontarians through EMO to proactively coordinate emergencies in collaboration with municipalities, First Nations, and community partners. The strategy and action plan builds on lessons learned from past emergencies, including the COVID-19 pandemic, which was the single largest provincial emergency in decades. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Denise Turner and Farzan Mirzazegdi for making today's event possible. If you have any questions or comments during the presentation, please send them to me or Martin Zerchek, the Zoom chat feature, and I would be pleased to facilitate at the end of the session. Now let's begin. Please join us in welcoming Deputy Minister Bernie Derible.
Well, thank you. Wow. How many folks on today? Anybody know?
We have upwards of 75 today.
Okay, cool. Well, listen, if I could just jump in here, I know we have a few questions, that kind of thing. I want to thank you very much for offering this platform and your kind words. It's exciting to be back home in Canada, in Ontario. Those of you who may have Googled or not Googled me know that most of my work is done in conflict and in countries of developing chaos or whatever. And hopefully being able to take some of those skills back home here to Ontario. Obviously, COVID kind of woke a lot of folks up across Canada. You all know the 5 pillars of emergency management better than most Canadians. And it's really interesting, when I did come back to help out with the COVID vaccine stuff, I was a bit surprised of Canada, Ontario, G7 nation, that didn't have a couple of extra masks and a couple of extra PPE kicking around. And obviously we didn't have the ability to manufacture it here. And so these were all kind of new or interesting observations I had during that time frame, where kind of kept asking myself, what happened? You know, why were a couple of us, one of them named General Hillier and some other, those of us kind of brought in, where was the capability, where was the thought process and that kind of thing. So it's really informed me when I was offered to kind of take this emergency management in Ontario and what will it look like in the future? What are the capabilities, capacities? Ontario is a rather large jurisdiction, as you know. I've been up in the James Bay coast there about a month ago. It took me longer to get there than it is for me to fly back to my former homeland of Afghanistan. It took so long to get there. And then of course, going around with flights and weather and that kind of thing, meeting Indigenous chiefs and communities and that kind of thing. And it was not lost on me that A, big jurisdiction, B, why was I the first person out visiting them? Why was I the first person of this, I guess, rank or whatever? Just call me Bernie, by the way. Why am I out there just sitting with a chief for an entire afternoon, walking the ground, looking at their territory, looking at the river that's probably a little bit higher than it should be. What are we doing to plan? We know they're going to evacuate in one community. I think this is the 21st year in a row. So I would argue on this call, and happy for you all to disagree with me, but on or about the 20th year, it's probably an occurrence versus an emergency. So there's a lot of things like that. We know flooding is going to happen. We have this incredible flood monitoring system out there. I think it's an MNRF, probes and cameras all over the place. My kids and I now look at it every morning to see where water's coming and that kind of thing. And we know it's coming. 10 years of analytics I've looked at. So I've only gone back 10 years. And I can tell you, I can absolutely, if I was bet.com, make a lot of money on betting where the flood's going to happen, where the fire is going to happen, where all that's going to happen. So I kind of just said to myself, wow, it's actually quite predictable, you know, then throw in the odd windstorm, which obviously now Tornado Alley, Barrie, Ottawa area. Why aren't we prepared? Why are we kind of reinventing the wheel every time? Why are we reinventing the wheel on evacuations? Who's in charge? Who's responsible? Who's the center of excellence? Perhaps it should be Emergency Management Ontario. Perhaps we should leverage folks like you guys, all the fantastic NGOs, nonprofits that are out there. And so that's really what we've done. I've kind of taken all of that. I've been in the gig now a year. Obviously, I've done, those who've met me before, there's not an earthquake, tsunami, flood that I haven't been around or been involved with outside Canada. And then, of course, I've done the flood of the century in Winnipeg. I was the chief of staff to that thing, and ice storms and stuff. So I've done a few things here, Y2K. So trying to take that experience and just going, how do we prepare, right? The three key pillars. And so many people forget this. What I think I've been able to do is go, there's really only three pillars in EM that I really obsessed with. And that's the planning, prep, and mitigation. You do that. And as you may or may not know, we just quietly, effectively, efficiently evacuated over 2,500 vulnerable Indigenous folks out of their communities in the last 3 weeks. No media, no drama. Why was that? Because we did 6 tabletops. I went up to visit everybody, gave them the autonomy to say, hey, we'd like to leave here. Do we need to do, you know, is it okay to do precautionary? Is it okay to look after our vulnerable? And that's really what I'm trying to take to the game here. And you saw some of it in the PEMSAP. Those of you who heard me speak, you know, I was recently speaking with the Fire Association and that kind of thing. It is truly to bring a proactive approach. My gosh, it's so simple. Have a 72-hour kit in your house. Change your fire alarms once in a while. Probably need changing. Somebody on this phone call, run and check to see if they're still blinking. There's so much work we can do in prevention that I'm sometimes a bit dismayed, to be quite frank, that not more of that's being done. And so that's really what I'm taking to the game. You know, I'm very fortunate to sit here after some very chaotic deployments, some very dangerous things that I've had to deal with for over 20 years. The reason I'm here, the only reason, not by luck, not by the grace of God or Allah or any other spiritual figure, it was just really good training, really good preparedness, and really good planning, and maybe a tiny bit of luck. But at the core of it, I always knew I was better trained, better prepared, and I practice and practice and practice. So I'll just use that as opening remarks. And a lot of what I'm saying right now, you see it in the PEMSAP. Super proud of that. The team knocked that out in 4 months with the vision of looking after Ontarians better. It was a document for Ontarians. It's not a government document. It's a government. My 12-year-old was able to read and say, hey, I get it, Dad. You're going to be preventative, you know, do all that cool stuff you always talk about at home. And now we're just going forward with leveraging a whole bunch of stuff. We're bringing in associations like yourself, bringing in NGOs, the Rubicons, the Samaritan Purses at the planning table, not after the fact, at the planning table. Hey, gang, looks like there might be flooding in Ottawa. Looks like there might be flooding in Madawaska. Anybody have a package of 20 or so-called people that maybe go out the door and help us on this one? So we don't have to bother, you know, the community only has so many people. So what I've really tried to reinforce every single time I have an opportunity to speak is, if we do the first 3 right, the response and recovery aren't as bad, full stop. And you all know that. You're all professionals in this business. Every dollar or every minute I spend on the first 3 is 15 in return. 15 in return. And that's, you can Google that. It's 12 USD. Let's round it up to $15 Canadian. And that's really how I'd like to just share with you all today, that This is the mindset you have now here at EMO. And I know we're going to have to talk about the expansion and some other stuff. But at the end of the day, we currently have a government that was reelected. They went through COVID. They're doubling down on preparedness, planning, mitigation. And I'm here to make sure that that happens. And we can talk about the moves to Treasury Board and my increased size and the increased budget and all that kind of thing separately. But bottom line is that it's time to reinforce some successes. And I'm so proud of the team on even the flood evacuations. There was no noise on any flooding in Madawaska, any flooding in Ottawa. We had field officers on the scene. We were linked in directly to the Ottawa PEOC, linked into with the Madawaska folks. And if they had needed folks, I had packages ready to go in 12, 24, 36 hours. Never, ever has happened before. And as we prepare now, I'm watching closely. I've got some very close friends in the Alberta, that Gong show in Alberta. I'm seeing lessons learned, and I'm already writing public policy for some of the things that Alberta has done or could have maybe done better that we're going to have in my back pocket. It's just in case. Everything from how do we employ firefighters? What do we pay firefighters? How do I employ the network of volunteers so the firefighting teams can go and relax and go and have good food, all of those bits and pieces ahead of the time. So I'll leave it at that for opening remarks, but what you've got before you is somebody who lives and breathes kind of Stephen Covey's, 7 habits of effective people. A, be proactive, start with the end in mind. And of course, I live and breathe that. And I think that's what we're bringing to the game now here in Emergency Management Ontario. I've got a great team of folks who are now clearly understanding that it's not 1-800-PEOC, we'll circle back to you. It's 1-800-PEOC, oh, by the way, we have a solution for you. And that's probably the crux of it. So I'll hand it back over to you all and go from there, if that makes sense. And I don't know what the format is, but I'm happy to take the odd question or any question or talk to folks after. So up to you.
Thank you so much, Bernie. Just providing an introductory comments and framework. From your perspective, what are some of the highlights of the Provincial Emergency Management Strategic Action Plan, Ontario's first ever strategic plan? And how have you seen that operationalized so far?
So I think we published it in January. I think the thing I'm most proud of is we took a lens of the most vulnerable. If you sit back in this game, and if you've been through enough disasters like I've been, the people who are affected are moms, children, people that need dialysis, that need to be moved. The pure threat of having to be evacuated for the 21st time in your life brings children who are 12 or 15 going, oh my God, is it time to be evacuated? Where am I going to go? Looking through that lens is probably the biggest achievement of that document. All right, so that's a complete game changer, by the way, game changer. Second piece to that is we are publicly accountable. We've got now a dashboard that's up saying we trained X number of folks on IMS, BEN, whatever it happens to be. Not necessarily us, but maybe through partners, maybe through contractors, whatever. How many tabletops have we done? And not just to do a tabletop to do a tabletop. It's to how do we, particularly smaller communities, smaller municipalities that just everyone's part-time mayor, part-time fire chief, part-time everybody, part-time CCEM. How do we facilitate their success? How do we come with tabletop in a box to help them? And then, oh, by the way, get rid of the red tape of how you fill out that form. Those are some of the things that this PEMSAP has now challenged our team, challenged the government, because it is a public document. I want you all to challenge me on it. Could have done this better. Could have done that better. So I think that's the real takeaway of it, is the fact we now have a construct that says we are the one window. Things are going to be bolted onto me whenever, maybe we have a fire, Bernie will be at the podium. Maybe we have a flood, Bernie will be at the podium. And I'll have lots of players and stuff on there, but we will be the one window. We will be the center for, do you need a tabletop? We just held one last week on derailments. I was told by CNNCP, first time in over 20 years that's been done. That is the proactive nature of what if. Those of you who may have been in the military or in the fire services world, we red team stuff, right? We red team what if things to death. That's what this PEMSAP is. We're going to what if, red team and check both internally to the Ontario Public Service. Are you ready? Are you ready? Whatever ministry you are. And then externally, we know. I've got the analytics. I know where the floods and everything are going to be happening. It's not like I have to red team the entire province, just certain spots that continually have these challenges, right? And the PEMSAP allows us to do some rather unique things. Like, for example, Barrie is Tornado Alley. Hate to tell everyone, that's the way it is. Well, maybe we can influence labor, not labor, but construction codes on fasteners in the roofs and stuff like that in future homes. How do we tornadoize the building code? And we have analytics. I partnered with Western University, Northern Tornado. I partnered with these folks who have all the analytics. It's just a simple matter now of coming together, where before EMO was this EMO kind of centralized depot. I've now opened my doors, opened my dinner table. I want Indigenous partners. I want you all. I want whoever wants to play, come to help us plan. Because we're certainly I'm a C+ student. I know I have my limitations, and I know I don't know Ontario as well as I should. So I'd be a fool not to ask other partners to come to the table and help me plan. My team doesn't know all the answers. They sit in the GTA all the time. So that's the kind of thing. So we've and PEMSAP has just given us that platform to build on all the other things that we'll talk about, build on numbers, build on capabilities, and probably the most important thing, build on a budget for EMO. EMO has never had its own budget. I think it's public knowledge now, 120 or something million over 3. And that includes capabilities, that includes training, that includes helping communities. We're going to have grant mechanisms for communities, smaller communities, to help themselves. Unheard of. Well, that's all part of that PEMSAP vision. So that's kind of where we're going. It's foundational. Matter of fact, I have some colleagues in other jurisdictions who want to copy paste it for their provinces. And so I told them I'd share it for a case of adult beverages and a bucket of chicken wings. So we'll see if they take me up on that offer. So that's it on PEMSAP.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. The PEMSAP has a specific section that elaborates as to partnership engagement and the expanded integration. Could you speak a little bit about that, traditional and non-traditional partners, and how their collective engagement really operationalizes many of the actionable elements of the plan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think traditional was we were kind of focused on municipalities a little bit during flooding, helping the Indigenous folks. But this idea of leveraging and having partners, you guys, whoever, all the NGOs, there's so many, I can't even think of them all. I got a bunch of them signed on for MOUs. Having them at the planning conference for Wildland Fire, SPCA, Salvation Army, and the food trucks, and having the food truck person tell us that, oh, if we have something up in Dryden, I can have 3 food trucks there in 24 hours or 48 hours. That's the non-traditional side of it. All right. And that was not happening before. People, when I first came to EMO, I said, hey, I use NGOs all the time in Nepal or Thailand, wherever I'm at. Where's our list? Where's our call out list? And it wasn't until December of last year that I finally got the team, hey, get them all around the table, bring them to PEOC, and let's have at her for 3 or 4 hours around the table and let's talk. Let's just say what are the capabilities these folks have? Well, it was really cool because at the end of that kind of Chatham House rules thing, we took a lot of hits and it was good fun. And I said, okay, cool, let's just do a speed round. What do you have? What do you have? What do you have? Well, in 15 minutes, I had 3,000 volunteers, food trucks, and amateur radio team, and Global Medic had 2 sandbag filling machines and all this kind of stuff that up until then, EMO knew nothing about. So that's the kind of non-traditional piece. And then it's the same with Indigenous. There are IFNA, FNURA, and a plethora of acronyms. They had never been brought to the table to actually do the planning. How can we help them in their communities to grow more folks? And I'm happy to say that even in this short period of time that I've been charged, we've already brought young Indigenous leaders, all hazards trained. I pay for it. This training, this training, this training. And I know there's all sorts of other options, but I wanted to bring them into the fold, so to speak, to say, we're going to give you this training. We're going to call you, you want to be a field officer, I'll recruit you. It's opening up that doorway of that. We're not just somewhere you call and then we coordinate and circle back to you. We are a bit of, I'm not going to use the word center of excellence, but something, so we're a library of stuff, a library of capabilities. And maybe we're a library of saying, hey, we're not up in the Dryden area, but I have a provider, one of our partners that we happily go do IMS 100, 200, 300 training for you, or happily go and do a tabletop exercise. So I think that's the non-traditional, right? And then of course, we have this incredible legislation for all the municipalities. And even on that one, I've met over 100 mayors of small communities, and I've told them all, stop worrying about your legislation. All of you generally need the same plan. And in your area, you need a really good flooding plan. Your area, you need a really good wind one. Book a time with the field officer, cluster your 4 or 5 municipalities together. We will come and do the tabletops. We will put you through your paces. You don't have to plan anything. Only thing you need to plan, pick a 3-hour time frame. We'll even pitch up with Subway or Tim Hortons just to have a nice afternoon of knowledge sharing, tabletopping, of these things that are important to you. And oh, by the way, if something is happening here, give the field officer a call, because I now have capabilities from one of our partners that's going to be here in 12, 24, 36. And I think that's that new environment where I want to be in a place where there's no more traditional, non-traditional, just all the bloody partners are at our table, full stop.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. And a question from one of our members. Several years ago, EMO took the lead in creating preliminary discussions and consultation with ministries, municipalities, and private sector in developing the incident management system, all hazard teams. The plan alludes to the utility of the teams. How do you see that operationalized in the next couple of years?
I should look into that. I don't think I've even seen something from a few years ago, because I kind of started anew. But we need all hazards, let's be honest, right? And we need capability and capacity of trained individuals. And it's not so much the trained individuals. We then need to, almost like alumni, right? We need to have alumni out there who let's just say we trained 100 all hazards folks from all over. Are you now ready to sign on to something called the Ontario Corps, where I could count on you? Perhaps you're retired. Perhaps you're Bernie in a year or two, and I'm retired up in my cottage in Muskokas, and I'm an all hazards person. And I'm happy to go out and help for a week, 2 weeks. Call me. I'll stay current. I'll go and hang out with your field or whatever. So I'm all in on the all hazard stuff, because there's no other way to do it right now. It's to be very specific on a certain thing is kind of a waste. But at the same time, I would like to know that I have that alumni, I have those folks out there that are kind of a bit of a return spring to us, because sometimes I've even seen, we did an all hazards for 20 people. All right. It's not, by the way, not a cheap course. We did that course. And I've now learned that some of my own people have bounced to the municipality of X, Y, or Z, right? So I've lost, not that it's a bad thing. They're now going to go help that municipality or whatever, but I feel like I'm like in hockey or something, the farm team of training and that kind of thing. So I'm all in on all hazards. I would just hope that when you go on the course, it's not just so you can have a certificate, it's so you can actually, perhaps we call you back and we need you for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and I'll talk separately to the Ontario Corps here in a minute. But this is something that I think is really important. We did 7,000 folk bums and seats last year. 7,000 folks across Ontario have received something, IMS 1, 2, 3, all hazards, basic emergency management course. Well, that's 7,000 human beings who are better than 95% of Canadians as to getting ready for stuff. Right? Anybody know that only 10% of Canadians think they have any hazards? 10%. Well, if I take that 7,000, I know it's a small number across 15 million Ontarians, but that's 7,000 humans who are kind of ambassadors to this world called emergency preparedness. So that's kind of what I feel sometimes our role is. How do I leverage more and more folks? I don't know if you were watching during the Emergency Preparedness Week. It was one of my passion projects. We deployed children's materials to the schools across Ontario, coloring books and bits and pieces. I don't know if all the teachers have used it. It's 3.6 million K-8 kids or something like that, that maybe a teacher in their spare time did the emergency preparedness coloring book or the quiz. The way we're going to get to the promised land, the way we're going to become more resilient, the way we're going to become better prepared, everyone on this call and all of my team and everyone else can't do it. I need mums and dads and aunties and uncles and grandparents to realize, holy crap, our fire detector's not working. Holy crap, we live near a creek and for 4 years it flooded. So can we go check the sump pump? Go have a go bag, whatever it is. I think that's a real role we can play as a member of the government. I obviously have access to all the schools. Obviously, I did a really cool thing for long-term care. Like that's next level long-term care stuff. Now I can deploy that to all the long-term care facilities going, make sure everybody reads this. Make sure you do this stuff. This is, I think, a really good platform for that. So I think to the point of the all hazards thing, 100%. And the more people we get involved in this game, the more folks we get involved in this game, is we are going to be resilient just because of that. For no other reason. Imagine if 500,000 of those kids out there across Ontario did the checklist or the coloring thing on emergency preparedness. I'm sure they might tell their mom or dad or caregiver or whoever, or they might take it in their backpack. This has never been done in emergency management Ontario history. We have lockdown drills, we have fire drills, we have emergency preparedness week, but no one ever thought about, what about that clientele? So this is the power of where we're going. And this is another great opportunity to share with you all that this current government is like all in, and no one's getting in my way. And I was told that Minister Lecce, it was one of the fastest things he ever signed to allow it to go to all the schools. He saw the good of it. And now we're going to get the long-term care stuff out. And then we have one for folks with animals, and folks have a whole one with folks with disabilities. Unprecedented territory. And using this platform, using all of you all, putting it on all your websites and that kind of thing to go forward. So training, training, training. You're going to hear me this theme wherever you meet me on the street or in a public speaking engagement. Training, 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 preparedness, planning. Wins. Wins.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. OAM did send out a copy of the PEMSAP to our members several months ago, and received comments, one in particular, stating that the strategic action plan sets out a roadmap for community resilience in leveraging the power and convergence of public, private, non-government, Indigenous, and the public in creating more resilient communities. I have a question from one of our members attending today, and the question is, multi-power outages are now a frequent occurrence, and with the increase of storms due to climate change, will the PEMSAP assist with funding for generators for vulnerable priority populations, number one? And the second question is, will there be assistance with harmonizing, and I assume it's municipal bylaws? And this question is from Christine Taylor, thank you, with Ottawa Public Health.
Right.
The first question is storms due to climate change and assistance with funding for generators for vulnerable populations.
Yeah, so on that one, and I'm certainly not an expert in building codes and legislation, but I hearken back to my time where I had to oversee the Ontario ice storm stuff. And at that time, there was no rules on a long-term care facility or any of these places having backup generators. And I remember my troops running around trying to heat up a long-term care facility or a retirement home or something for like 2 hours. We turn on the furnace for 2 hours, run off to the next one. And I have to check this, so please don't take this as gospel, that there is supposed to be now legislation on new builds particularly, and I think it even goes towards some of the older ones, that if you are in those facilities, and I'm just using those as an example, the vulnerable list of places is significant. They are supposed to have a generator hooked up somewhere for that basic backup stuff. If they don't, love to hear about it more quietly. But we have folks who, are long-term care inspectors and all of those folks, they don't, they, as much as I wish they reported to the burn, they don't. But these are things that I can also influence if this isn't being done. And I perhaps talking way above my experience level with the OPS, but I'm watching a whole bunch of things being built in and around on long-term care and other things, and everyone's got the generator. So if there are things that are somehow grandfathered, then this is something that insurances, I know insurance companies want them, right? And that kind of thing. So we are coming up with a grant mechanism through for mainly the smaller communities and that kind of thing. And so there's a bunch of things that could be done there. But on these bigger infrastructure projects, and I've done a lot of infrastructure projects in my career, I've yet to do one without backup generation. I even see new homes, some cottages are being built up near my cottage, and it seems everyone's putting one of those Gen X or Generac things on there. So that's all part of that. So it's a long answer to, there's supposed to be legislation in place. There are supposed to be checklists that these long-term care facilities, everything from aircon to air circulation and that kind of thing, that at a minimum should have backup power at a minimum, right? So it'd be interesting to know, I can make a couple of calls and find out how many don't have it or how many do have it, if that's helpful, and I'll have my team look into that for you. So these are all, to me, challenges that if somebody has chosen not to do it, then I, for example, as somebody who has an elder parent in one of these homes, when I put my dad in there, what do you think the first things I checked on were? I didn't give a crap about the meals or how many PSWs were on. I cared about emergency stuff. So there's that part of it too. So I hope that's somewhere close to what you're looking for, but I need to know these things because this is in the prevention part, the preparedness, the mitigation part. And if somebody was to give me a list of long-term care facilities, private, public, or otherwise, that don't have it, I'd be sending a couple of people to knock on the door.
Thank you so much. And Deputy Minister, another question we have is focus on the hazard community profile. Did the plan take into consideration multi-hazards across the province, and what are some of the high priority areas where resources and planning would be dedicated to those particular risks?
Flooding for sure is number one, because people continue to build in stupid places, unincorporated. I found out there's like 1,000 unincorporated cities who love to go build near places that they shouldn't, and then they're 1-800-POC when the flooding comes when they shouldn't have been there. So we took all the analytics. Like I mentioned earlier, we know for a fact that Barrie, Ottawa, that there's a corridor of wind. And just guess what, folks, there's wind going through there. So sort yourself out going forward. We've given all those analytics. I've spoken to these folks. A lot of it, though, is at municipal level, right? We have 444 municipalities, and there's 444 fiefdoms, right? And we can suggest and advocate till the cows come home. But they'll just look at me and go, all right, great. Thank you very much for talking to council tonight. Really appreciated your passion and enthusiasm, but great, get lost. So I then, of course, use the levers. I recently had the insurance, brokers of Canada or whoever in my office come in just to say hello. They love the PEMSAP, by the way. They're a huge advocate of it. And I just kind of told them, I said, maybe you all need to start pushing that if you're in the tornado zone, maybe the new builds need the $500 worth of roof brackets that they use in Kansas City, by the way. No houses, nothing happens. So I have all this stuff. But there's all of this play, right, between provincial and municipal and all that kind of thing. So, and what's funny is that sometimes I challenge the insurance folks. I said, okay, let's just say we got Barrie Municipality Council to agree to this change in the construction in their fiefdom. Are you insurance companies willing to give someone $500 off their house insurance if they do it? Like, we got to play ball here. You can't have your cake and eat it too, and I'm that guy. I've had so many different jobs. I look at them and go, what was your goddamn profit loss last year? I'll tell you what it was, outstanding. So you can go whine to someone else, but sometimes you need to do this too, because giving somebody on a new build a $500 deal on their insurance for that first year because they put the brackets, you're still charging $2,200 annually. And oh, by the way, it's about $75,000 to replace the goddamn roof when it does blow off if you don't listen to me. So these are the kind of, I'm being quite frank on this call. This is the discussions I have with people going, don't BS a BSer. Like, I know how the game works, right? And I always tell them, and some of these stats they don't know, I go, $1 invested for you guys on resilience is 15 in return. It's not just me doing it. So I'm quite forceful with some of these folks, quite forceful with councils, quite forceful in a professional way. I disrupt them a little bit and say, why don't you take a slice of this, right? Because guaranteed You know, the last time the wind went through Barrie, I think it's 29 roofs are missing. Well, that's easily, maybe someone can correct me, that's easily 50, 75, maybe even 100K worth of damage over $500. So it's pretty simple math. So that's how I look at that. So we need to advocate, and it can't just be Bernie, you know, because Bernie might be leaving in a couple of years and go and retire, but I need all of you. I need you guys as an association to start saying, hey, you know, and I have these quite frank discussions at AMO, at Northern one. I went and spoke to a bunch of municipalities going, you know, you got a role to play here too, a little bit, right? I'm not suggesting all of it, but you do need to practice a little bit more. You do need to stop building, you know, near water. You know, it floods. I can show you the analytics, and I know you get a lot of money for it because it's on the water and all that kind of thing, but it's a double-edged sword. So I'm the person who has very, very frank discussions with folks saying, I got the analytics. If I was bet.com, I'd be winning a lot of money on this. I know what's going to happen. So why don't you just play ball? So we got this weirdness, right? I only have certain levels of authority in these municipalities and stuff. And not everybody is, what do they call it? What are those super mayor powers or something? Not everybody has that, right? So.
Thank you, Deputy Minister, for that excellent segue really to the next comment and question. Daphne Farrell, OAEM's Director of Communities, is working with the EMO staff and have been for the last couple of months now in organizing a session for creating awareness of some of the upgraded order and council ministry responsibilities having to do with risks. And that is something that EMO and OAEM through our partnership will be planning in the very near future. The question though from Daphne is what has been the response from the order and council ministries on the provincial emergency management strategy and action plan as when we look at risk and sort of the directed responsibilities? What kind of feedback have you had so far?
Real simple answer. And if any of my colleagues know DMs and stuff like that, they've been slow on the uptake. They are holding on to their OICs like it was their firstborn. And they need to understand that that maybe back in the day was perhaps a way to do it. But in today's world, we've known climate change and all this stuff's been happening for easily a decade. We see the results of it seems every third week. And some of those OICs, I think, need to be shaken. The tree needs to be shaken a little bit. And I recently had a discussion as to this exact topic with a consulting company that MNRF hired to talk about their 7 OICs. And if you think I'm frank on this call, I was even more frank on that one as to why. Well, what if we could do it differently? What if we could have Emergency Management Ontario with the EMAT organization under my training and stewardship? What happened if I would have Spill Action Center under my stewardship and training and working together all the time? What would happen if I had the MNRF Water Bomber Air Force under my leadership and training and getting to know each other and working together all the time? I can go on and on and on, right? As to why aren't we doing it that way? And so there's a lot of discussion as to, is Emergency Management Ontario, for the jurisdiction that almost has 50% of the population of Canadians, largest Indigenous community, what are we, third largest province, second largest, I can't remember, but big. Is there now a time where some of this stuff should be under one umbrella, so I don't have to go and use my relationship building to get an asset or go through a briefing note or go through an OIC that is just some paradigm that was written a long time ago. And I've had some pretty clear marching orders by the Cabinet Office and the Premier's Office that in an emergency, there ain't no OIC or policy or boundary on the map that gets in the way of saving lives. And so I lead that life. You all know I've been in conflict zones and everything. I've gone into other countries to help people, even though I wasn't probably supposed to, but I'm still here to talk about it. So this OIC thing is new to me. And our team is working on papering some stuff that could be palatable to others. But I do honestly, for this call, tell you that I think people are holding on to it. When I ask them, for example, well, what if we could try it? Oh, OIC. It's our OIC. That's what I hear. I'm going, well, is that the argument? It's your OIC. Well, if it's your OIC, then train them. Train EMAT. How come they're not going out 3 times a year? Train them. You know, so this is the kind of thing I think about, right? Because I just always fall back to the basics. Anybody on this call who's got nieces, nephews, whoever playing sports or violinists or singers or dancers, they practice a lot. And they train a lot. They don't just wake up in the morning and be, you know, a Toronto Conservatory grade 9 pianist. It's the same here. Like if we needed to deploy EMAT, for example, this beautiful 120 bed blow up hospital, I'm here to tell you, it would take a week of sign-offs. Well, you know what? What if there's a big mine accident up in middle of nowhere or somewhere, and I need it there, like now? Well, they wouldn't be able to find the keys to this, and they wouldn't be able to find the pump to that. And why isn't it already pre-deployed up north where it's probably going to be used, or at least 50 sections, you know, it comes, you can do it in groups of 10 people. Why don't we have 6 sections already deployed up north? Why don't we have that? Where, you know, it would be a big hoorah, right? And I'd be up 24/7 for 5 days trying to make it happen, right? And then everybody would be going, oh, but that's Bernie one window. He's in charge now. Bernie's one window. He's in charge. So long story, again, clearly I'm not enthusiastic about the OIC old paradigm. I would like to see a new OIC paradigm. So if anybody on this call has some tricks up their sleeve, how I win that battle, I'm all ears after this call.
Thank you so much, Deputy Minister. And a question from one of our members has to do with the Indigenous First Nation consultation and in the development of the plan, and any learnings or anything to share with us from your experience. We
did extensive. I was in the room for most of them. We heard from everyone, and my technique of facilitating is have at it. I got my body armor on, go for it. What have we done right? What have we done wrong? How do we improve it? So that was really fun. And the one takeaway I had, and this is now supported by Indigenous Services Canada at the federal level, is the Indigenous communities want me to work myself out of a job in their communities, which I was the first jurisdiction in Canada to sign on to. Indigenous-led EM, Indigenous-led evacuations, Indigenous-led everything. And all I said is, how can I facilitate that? I know it can't happen just by saying, go do it. So I'm very much, and I continue to talk to, like I said earlier, all the acronyms, the IFNAs, the NANs, the ISN, MASQUAs, all of them, whatever help they need for them to get to that end state of being able to do all this stuff on their own, I'm all in. So that's the end of it. And I'm on speed dial with, I think, 52 chiefs who we talk about a whole bunch of different things. I even talk to them about how do we invest in, how do we get Indigenous run hotels? Why are we coming all the way to Niagara Falls at the Best Western? You know, hey, why don't you take some of that money you got up there and do something like this? So I'm involved in a whole gamut of stuff. And the reason I talk like this is because I've done this in other countries. I've worked with tribal communities for over 20 years in other jurisdictions. So this is not new to me. The ability to go and sit and drink tea and hang out in Saskatchewan all day, I love it. And I'm happy for them to tell me all the crap we've done wrong for the last 10 years. Even though it's 10 years ago, I'm happy to hear it because that really informs a community, right? Because they keep talking about it, they talk about it. So I really want to be a catalyst for them to be successful. And I will do anything to reinforce their success going forward, whether they need one field officer or a half a field officer, you know, the next 2, then they take over. And I even, you know, have offered, or anybody on this call can tell me how to do it. I'm ready to, you know, support along with my federal counterparts. And I've got sign off from this from the deputy minister there. How do we do train the trainer? How do we have Indigenous folks doing all of the IMSing and all of the critical blah, blah, blah stuff? And has, you know, PEMSAP is, by the way, in Cree and Ojibwe. I've got the basic emergency management. I've got an Indigenous kind of writing group, making it more suitable, more universal for them. That's never been done at Emergency Management Ontario. I just told people, why didn't we do it? Why not? Right? And I made a real commitment. We had a wonderful event in Dryden where we had all the Indigenous folks from up there. I sat on stage and said, let's go. How do you guys want to be in charge next year or this year? Here. I think I even gave my phone and said, you take over the PEOC, come and run the PEOC for the evacuation. So I'm really really what I'm trying to say is I want that to happen, and I can't do it alone. But I have a saying that I've told my team: nobody in EMO is allowed to say no except me. And I don't know how to spell it. So all you're going to get is, yeah, okay, cool. How do we work this out? How do we do a training? How do we do train the trainer? How do we get 100 Indigenous folks trained on all hazard stuff, right? And the beauty in the Indigenous communities, they've got this thing called the federal unlimited bank account. And the feds, I've signed a document saying that I'm going to work myself out of a job on all things Indigenous. And what I mean by that is I'm going to support to the extent I humanly can to make that happen, right? It's a bit of a journey here. You know, it's obviously not going to happen overnight, but there's a journey here. But it starts with the attitude, the growth mindset, and the security in my own skin to say, yeah, I've met so many former RCMP officers who are are Indigenous in the community. I've met so many good folks who actually know what to do. The problem is perhaps PEOC or perhaps the feds get in the way sometimes. So I acknowledge that. And I've seen it, folks. Tribal elders in Sudan, Northwest Pakistan, Afghanistan, where I spent a lot of my time, are no different than here. They want autonomy. They want to do stuff on their own. So I get it. I don't need a briefing note on it. So that's a long answer to that, but I'm all in. And I would really love to get, I've challenged some of the chiefs saying, give me what you need. Give me the list. Tell me the folks. I'll bring the training to you. You come to Toronto. I don't care. Up to you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. We have 3 more questions for you.
Woo!
Yes, that's
I'm
wonderful.
on a roll.
Thank you. And one comment from our members is having to do with the most practical plan in preparing people and communities for future emergency through a system of partnerships. And the question really is, now focusing on the new organizational structure and transformation of EMO, we're really interested to see really what has been the outcome over the last year and a half now, and really the pivoting of EMO in support of the first ever action plan. And what have your impressions so far?
I think people are buying into it. I mean, here we are talking about it. So that's a good thing. I get a lot of nice emails and from community leaders. Like I said, the 100 mayors I've spoken to think it's the fact that we have capabilities for them on very short notice where they didn't have to worry about paying for the hotel. They don't have to worry about paying for the training. They don't have to worry about that. I'll take care of it. I'll take care of that for you. The fact that we've done 37 tabletops across Ontario, never been done before. Just let you know. Never. First time. 7,000 people trained, never done before. So there's 3 quick ones for you. So we have this we're pushed the ball kind of up the hill here. And we've got municipalities calling us saying, hey, we've got our 4 groups together. We'd like to do this at the tabletop. Will this enable us to sign off on our readiness? Yep, cool. We'll be there on such and such a date. So that's happening. I spoke earlier about the derailment. We literally sent the invitations for the derailment exercise less than 2 weeks ahead of the event because I wanted to do a no notice to test my team. How fast can we do a training? 32 agencies, federal, private, internal, external, pitched up on 2 weeks notice. Oh, by the way, in person. So if that's not proof that people are going, holy crap, EMO has got some swagger, EMO wants to take the lead on this, I don't know what else is. And that just happened last week. So to show we rolled out in less than 6 months, a complete public education take home for long-term care, disability, people with animals, children. I don't know what else to tell you. So that's the momentum we've got going. So, and I'm just going to reinforce it. And I really hope folks on this call, if one of your kids or whoever, you don't like the coloring book or don't like it, or they haven't gotten it, friggin' give me a shout because I'll track it down. And that's what we need to do. So this is new. This is all new, right? And perhaps I need to do better communicating writ large as to all this cool stuff we're doing. But even the fact that we've moved to Treasury Board, that's a big thing. Anybody who knows government, The fact that EMO is at Treasury Board and my boss has the keys to the bank, and I brief directly to him and directly to the Premier and the Secretary once a week, that's never happened before. People didn't even know where to find EMO in the org chart of government before. So these are gigantic steps. Matter of fact, British Columbia copy pasted us on the move, right? So these are, I think, are very tangible steps, big things. And let's remember, Bernie, I've only been here a year, right? Not a year and a half, a year, right? And I came here with 74 people, no budget, by the way. And now in this budget, I got my lottery victory, and we've got lots more people. I tripled the size of the field officers. You know, all of these things are significant I would say in less than a year. So, you know, then the whole Ontario Corps, it's a separate thing. And we just got so many things going on right now that just by doing this, the fact that we did 37 tabletops, the fact that we got all that education materials out, my God, I would challenge anybody on this call to do that in a year.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. And I believe you addressed the final question, but the overall really comment was that the one window approach within the plan itself is definitely resonating with the public and with communities and other partners. And you just talked at great length about the EMO's resources and the significant growth over the past year with the Treasury Board Secretariat, and said a few words about EMO's expansion to meet those expectations and really to support the plan and its successful operation. One more question, this comes from Daphne Farrell. Is there an interest in engaging with our US partners cross-border in emergency management strategic planning?
Yes, the answer is yes, and particularly on the nuclear file, right? Obviously, a lot of people forget or may not even know this one. Ontario is the second largest nuclear jurisdiction in the world. And by the way, that takes up a bit of my day too, right? It's not just evacuations or windstorms. That's a pretty big part of my portfolio, because I think one of the 3 OICs I have, I'm in charge of that. So but I know how safe they are and that kind of thing. But to answer Daphne's point is that I've actually asked my team, I think they're organizing me to go down and see Michigan and some cross-border stuff, because obviously, you know, even if not just nuclear, I should be talking about what are we going to do with the water and flooding and all that kind of piece. So her question is actually timely, because I think we're doing it over the summertime and that kind of thing. I've probably been remiss in not going and visiting my colleagues south of the border, but there is this sometimes in the bureaucracy that I'm still learning here. There's some heartburn about that. I'll probably have to pay for it myself or something, because they don't have a system to allow that. But all that to say is it's super important. Relationships matter. When I think about what I'm very quietly helping Alberta. The second in command of the Emergency Management Alberta Agency is a close colleague of mine, and this is new to him. And so I'm helping him quietly on stuff. You know, we did a lot of good. Ontario did incredible work during Fiona. The package we sent, I even sent field officers down there to relieve their operation centers, and we had a whole bunch of really cool things going on there. And I've heard it loud and clear from Premier Ford that if Michigan needs us or New York State needs us or whatever, we're ready to go. So while I've spoken to my counterparts kind of on phone calls and stuff like that, I do want to go and have the face-to-face and say, hey, here's my personal number, call us for anything. And so that relationship, you know, even through the politicos, and you can never not have them in the conversation. So I hope I'm not making people uncomfortable, but the political stuff is important to realize in emergencies. One of the challenges you probably all see on the Alberta one, the troops on the ground are doing great, but it's in the middle of a bloody election. And that just makes life, God, no, my buddy, no wonder he's calling me all the time. This is new ground to him. He's an expert in emergency management stuff, expert in doing stuff. And he just simply is going, oh my God, Bernie, give me some tricks on the political piece. And so that's really important. So I actually don't have to worry about that in this government anyway, that they're go forth and do good is kind of what they tell me. So we will do it. And I owe you that, Daphne. I will let you know when I get back from those discussions.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. With a few more minutes to go, I do have a question having to do with cultural hazard identification and risk assessment. Through your consultations, do you anticipate that the Indigenous communities would have access to preparing their own HIRA?
Why not? You know, like I said, if you're a fool or inexperienced in life, if you can't sit across from Indigenous and tribal leaders and elders and say, hey, you all write it, you all put your inputs in. If you want us to kind of make it look nice on an 8.5 by 11, I'm happy to do that piece, but I am not qualified to have that discussion. That's up to you all. And you do that. And that's where I just take a simple stance. This is your community, not Bernie's. And it's not the feds, and it's not all these other folks who used to think it's theirs. This is yours now. We've got sign-offs that people are going to help. There's money put aside towards this. I'm roll up my sleeves and give them pro bono help. Take advantage of it. But if any of my folks think they can add to that, good luck, unless they live there. And I quite often say that. Who am I to tell the mayor of Severn Township, who has 8,000 members in his flock who've elected him for 4 times in a row as mayor, and he tells me we need folks now because I think the water's coming up, and he's lived there for 67 years. Who am I to say, oh, call me back tomorrow when the water gets up around your ankles? Hell no. Yes, sir, on the way. And it's the same with the Indigenous, the cultural piece. Who are we? You know, I remember during the COVID vaccine distribution, I think you all know I was a big part of that. And because of my global experience, I was able to pinpoint who to go and speak to in the Somali community to get Somali folks lined up to go and how to do it. I went to see the elders. We're lacking here. You guys are way down the list. Well, Bernie, thanks for coming. Drank God knows how much tea, had to go 3 times, and finally got them to the point of, can you bring it to us with some Somali nurses, doctors, whoever you can cobble together, bring it here. We will go and door knock. We will bring them to you. Okay, no problem. Bang. Did the same with community X, Y, and Z across the GTA. We became world leaders, by the way, in the number of people vaccinated per capita, top 3 in the world, because I use those cultural lived experiences to go, we can go and tell people to go get vaccinated all day long. Tell them to go to a mass vac site, tell them to go to one of the 3,700 pharmacies. But how about we just go and ask the elders in the community X, Y, or Z what would be best for them? And all of a sudden people are going, oh, Bernie, thank you for that. And I'm not looking for accolades. I'm just simply saying that's the learned experience. So on the Indigenous piece, hell no. I've met so many smart elders and so many knowledge holders. I ain't getting in their way. So that's my shtick.
On behalf of the OAEM, we'd like to thank you for your meaningful and insightful comments and the way in which you addressed a multitude of questions regarding the Provincial Emergency Management Strategy and Action Plan, and how it will be further strengthened through ongoing engagement with a multitude of partners to ensure Ontarians are prepared for future emergencies. And thank you all for participating in today's OAEM Emergency Management Spotlight Series for May 2023. If you have any suggestions for future event topics, please reach out via OAEM's Connect With Us portal at oaem.ca. The recorded session will be uploaded to our website shortly, and this concludes today's session. Thank you all.
Thank you.